United States submarine base at Key West, Florida. A dispatch that quoted President Truman's press secretary, Charles Ross, as saying that President Truman has no knowledge of any secret project by this government that would give substance to the existence of such objects. Ross also said that both the Air Force and the Navy deny that such objects exist.
Hey, what's up?
How's it going?
It's been better. This is a tough one to come off of Patreon and pretend like we weren't just screaming for 45 minutes.
Yeah, that tends to be like all of Patreon though, so I guess it's just par for the course.
This one was extra special.
Right.
By extra special, I mean extra terrible. And speaking of extra terrible, hey, what's up? My name is Noelle, and I am simply not having a good time.
And I'm Chelsea. I have been texted by televangelists all damn day.
How's that going?
It's going great.
This is about the free napkin, yeah?
I don't know. So I got a text message that said, hey, hello, God bless you. I said, hey, thanks.
Did you say, hey, I haven't sneezed?
I said, hey, thanks, who's this? And it said, this is Pastor Brian with Apostle Taylor. And
Who the fuck is Apostle Taylor?
I don't fucking know, man. I'm going to ask, though. I said, how's it going? Pastor Brian, the Presbyterian? And then I'm with Apostle Taylor. And I said, Apostle T. Taylor for Typhoid Taylor with the soup. And they said, hello, Brother Charles. And I said, brothers, howdy. Said they haven't responded yet.
What? They haven't responded? It's just like an FBI call. They just needed you on the line for a certain amount of time so they could track your location.
Are we here to talk about Jesus? I give my number out at the gym a lot.
That's a good reply.
Thank you.
Can't wait to see what
they're going
to be like, say about that.
What a strong man.
But I hope so. I still also hope that we get those prayer napkins.
I've gotten
it's really
nothing.
Important to me.
Yeah,
seems like a bit of a scam.
Yeah, I know. I told you that it's like so weird to experience it because I was like, oh, these people will, message for their free cloth, and then they got their foot in the door. Now I'm getting text messages.
Mm-hmm. Also, like a week later to the day because we did it this time last week. Like, what the fuck are you guys doing? I know you're not praying this whole time.
Yeah, they did reply and they said yes. I'm just gonna say excellent.
Ask them about the free prayer napkins. Tell them, make up a real good juicy story, but make it weird. Be like, I was cooking up some methamphetamine to be able to pay for my 17th hip replacement when my trailer blew up, and I've been anxiously waiting by the mailbox every day for the past 7 days for my prayer napkin.
Hold on, I took what you said and I kind of twisted it a little bit.
Yeah, twisted. Yeah, put your own spin on it.
Yeah, excellent. I've been struggling with some addictions, and I feel like people protesting Roe v. Wade has really pushed me over the edge. Been waiting on my prayer cloth.
Say waiting by the mailbox for the last 7 days for my prayer cloth. I've been praying about it, but it seems like those are unanswered. I have a feeling it's because I don't have the prayer cloth.
I've been praying about it, but it's hard to know if God hears me through the mask.
Yep. Through the mask, yeah, good.
Without the prayer cloth. This is so weird too because it feels so sneaky because like as someone, who has gone to church and filled out prayer forms, they just go, thank you. They take your little card and then they don't fucking bother you ever again. To take my phone number and tell me twice that you're with a Typhoid Taylor but they wouldn't even, I was like, Typhoid Taylor with the soup? They didn't reply. That's rude, man.
Well, because they want to keep it open-ended.
Yeah.
It's, you know what I mean? It's, crowd work. Keep it vague so you don't give anyone knows. It's smart.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing.
So.
Speaking of, today is the end of televangelism. Not literally, unfortunately, just in our world, hopefully.
Yeah. Well,
unless another motherfucker comes out of the goddamn cracks of the earth and ruins my life, this is it. And I did take a different spin on this because we deserve it. But I still tried to stay objective. So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
James Orson Bakker was born January 2nd, 1940 in Muskegon? That sounds right?
It doesn't sound wrong.
It's true. Michigan.
In Michigan.
He is the son of Raleigh Bakker and what did you think this is? Fernia?
I'd like to say Fernaya.
Fernia.
Doesn't matter. Fern.
Oh, Fernia's. Yeah, she went by Fern, doesn't matter. Lynette Irwin. They raised him in the Fundamentalist Assemblies of God Church, which is the largest denomination of Pentecostal Christianity today. So let's take a second to talk about Pentecostals. Like other forms of evangelical Christianity, Pentecostalism emphasizes the work of the Holy Spirit through direct experience or miracles, and the presence of God by the believers. They are pretty close to biblical literalists and believe if you are, quote, born again by repenting your sins and accepting Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, you will live a spirit-filled and empowered life. And baby, do they mean it literally? Because this empowerment includes spiritual gifts such as speaking in tongues and divine healing. So if you're thinking about the people who wiggle and whirl on the ground, speaking in a not real language, you are thinking about Pentecostals.
Yep. Can you speak in tongues? I want to hear what it would sound like if you did it.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. So, if my version of speaking in tongues probably doesn't sound as cool as their version of like speaking in tongues, because they say it and they kind of go at it with like a Latin origin. Whereas like mine is more closer to baby gibberish. Mine would be like, it's more like scatting, I guess. It would be more like scatting.
Like a caveman yelling at someone or trying to explain like a coffee pot. Yeah. Well, that's true. I think speaking in tongues is just baby gibberish. They're not speaking Latin.
Yeah. But you know, like when they do it sometimes, or at least the ones that they put on the screen, they give a good show. They put on a show.
Right.
Whereas mine's just like bad scatting. What does yours sound like? Will you speak in tongues?
So there's a drag queen that was on RuPaul's Drag Race named June Jambalaya. And so now I find that if I were speaking in tongues, it would be like,
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yours is more of like an incantation, I feel like. It also kind of sounds like people who have really thick Irish accents a little bit.
Yeah. Like what is that, a Cockney accent? Or
Cockney,
is that British?
Yeah, I think I don't know. It's one of those. It's
like the TikToks where they're like, say you're going to the store, they're like, hi, Zapaka, Lotapata.
You're like, what the fuck did he say? yeah, that, you know?
Yeah.
Different interpretations. Either way, it's made up and it doesn't matter. So Pentecostals tend to see their movement as reflecting the same kind of spiritual power and teachings that were found in the apostolic age, which is the period of time from the death of Jesus until the death of the last of the 12 apostles. So, needless to say, they got a pretty big head about themselves. And for this reason, some Pentecostals also use the term apostolic or full gospel to describe their movement. One of the funnest parts about Christianity is no matter what version you're looking at, everyone thinks they're the one that's right. And surprise, someone's got to be wrong. And in my humble opinion, it's all of you. Anyway, Jim was self-described, and I want to really highlight self-described because no one other than himself said this, as a visionary dreamer. And he also wasted no time leaving home in that small paper mill town of Muskegon, Michigan, for Minneapolis, fresh out of high school in 1959. He attended North Central University, which is a Minneapolis Bible college affiliated with the Assemblies of God, so the Pentecostal movement, you know, have fun with that education. And in the documentary, Through the Eyes of Tammy Faye, they pull the story from his 1996 autobiography, I Was Wrong, saying that, quote, he wanted to be a radio DJ and loved Fats, Domino, and Little Richard. But then as a high school senior, he was in a car with a girl singing along to Fats on the radio when he ran over a little boy who was seriously injured. And he promised God that if the boy recovered, he would give up rock and roll and devote his life to spreading the word.
You know, just running down children in cars.
Surprise! This version of events, according to a 1989 report in the Chicago Tribune, is not entirely truthful. The accident happened 2 years before he said it did, when he was 16, and he was in the car with his cousin George, not a girl. And friends and relatives do not recall a dramatic conversion or sudden rejection of rock and roll. It wasn't until the following October, when Jim was conducting religious rallies aimed at teens, that he started telling his friends he wanted to become a traveling evangelist. Jim sparked a lifelong habit for flashy fundraising at North Central University, where he helped put together and starred in a 15-act vaudeville-style benefit show for his school paper. This vaudeville, is also where, vaudeville, yeah. It
Isn't
was
that
the 40s.
Like the Dash and Glam, like, hey, Chicago and stuff is like kind of vaudeville, right?
Yeah, I would like vaudeville. The thing is like, I try to imagine what a vaudeville style show looks like at a Pentecostal evangelical college. Yeah. And my brain has a hard time wrapping around it, because like vaudeville is like hurly burly. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's 1930s magicians, acrobats, jugglers, singers, dancers, a little bit of light burlesque, if you will. It's not what I'd call godlike, maybe I'd say. I just like, I would love to know what it actually looked like, because like a vaudeville style show is anything but aligned with evangelicals, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But he did it. So
yeah, he did great.
Apparently he did awesome. This is also where he met Tammy Faye. So let's talk about that. Talk about her. Tammy Faye LaValle was born in International Falls, Minnesota on March 7, 1942, to Pentecostal preachers Rachel Minnie Fairchild and Carl Oliver LaValle. Her parents were married in 1941, and shortly after she was born, they went through a painful divorce that resulted in her mom being absolutely shunned by their former church.
Dude, and her mom, like, carried the weight of that so hard that it was pretty heartbreaking, actually. Her mom would say stuff like, the only reason they even let me in because I'm like a whore and a harlot is because I know how to play piano. Like, her mom really got mistreated by religion and yet stuck by it so feverishly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, their town was either like 2,000 or 6,000 population. It was really fucking small, and it was completely Pentecostal evangelical. And so that was it. It didn't, like, that's why she herself, Tammy's mom, like, was a self-proclaimed harlot. You know what I mean? And she was like, I deserve to be spit on by the community, and I am so thankful and grateful that they've let me back in.
Yeah.
And Tammy was definitely seen as like a bit of a black mark on her mom's record, because she was a child of divorce, and in the eyes of God, divorce is not it. And now you've got this like essentially bastard child. Like, it was not the vibe. It was a terrible fucking time. Like, her childhood was horrifically tumultuous because of it, and she like experienced deep religious mistreatment.
And it clearly like framed what her entire life was going to be like, because she was so ostracized. Like, she wasn't even allowed to come to church, and she wanted to go so badly. And then when she finally spoke in tongues, like in the through the eyes of Tammy Faye Bakker, people were like, this girl's a miracle, she's a gift, and that was when she was finally accepted. So of fucking course she would run to religion and then want to be a part of that, because that's the only thing that got her a foot in the door with this hyper-religious community. Because she was like, what, 10 or 11, and nobody spoke to her, and they treated her like a ghost. And then she started speaking in tongues one day, and they're like, bless this child, miracle of God.
Yeah, she was 10. So both of Tammy's parents remarried, and she stayed with her mom, who remarried Fred Willard Grover. And they formed a pretty large blended family where she was the oldest of 8 and helped raise these kids. The home they live in was modest, to say the least, packed with all these kids and no indoor plumbing. And like Chelsea was saying, at age 10, she went to a prayer meeting at her mother's Pentecostal church. There, she made the decision to pray into her heart. Tammy said, quote, "For hours, I lay on the floor and spoke in an unknown language. I was unaware of anyone else. I was walking with Jesus." And this is from her first book, I Gotta Be Me, published in 1978. Ever since that prayer meeting, her desire was to become a minister. I also want to note here that in high school, Tammy starred in her production of Oklahoma, was elected queen of her Bible camp twice, and was super active in choir through high school and college. After high school, she went to North Central Bible College in Minneapolis in 1960, where, as mentioned before, she met Jim Bakker. He was her hall monitor in her dorm. Mm-hmm. And just a visual reminder here for those who have an idea of what Tammy Faye looks like. The Tammy Faye that we're talking about right now in this time period is a little visually different than the one you might see in our mind's eye. Remember, she was raised to believe that wearing makeup was a one-way ticket to hell, so she didn't even have lipstick on yet. And according to her 1996 memoir, Tammy, Telling It My Way, you will notice I'm going to be referencing a lot of books. My girl was writing. On their first date, Jim took her to church. He told her his dream of starting a ministry. And at the end of the date, he confessed, "Tammy LaValle, I have loved you ever since the minute I saw you walk into school." And then he asked her to marry him. 2 weeks later, they were officially engaged on what was technically the end of their third date.
It's pretty par for the course for our state. That's not weird at all.
I know, for the Mormons, that's pretty normal. But also, this is like now the second televangelist couple who got married either by the end of their first date or shortly thereafter.
Yeah, because they want to be boinking.
I mean, true.
You don't want to wait. That's what happens. Is usually by like what the rules in the ether that I heard growing up was like third date.
Was that a rule? I mean, I guess it could be a rule. It's
like, don't put out on the first date, and then you can kiss them on the second date, and then if they buy you dinner on the third date. Just the simple, rules of misogyny that dictates when women are allowed to put out.
Can I say, admit, ask? I never knew what the base's values were. When someone said we went to first base, like, what is that? I
think first base is just like, let's figure it out together, because now I'm not sure. First base has to be kissing, right?
Wait, how many bases are there?
4. First, second, third, and home. Yeah.
Oh my God. So we only have 4 things? And we'll say home is anal?
Like, home is just full on intercourse, yeah. So first,
well, that doesn't even sound like, but that's not even the end of the goal. You know what I mean? And I thought Christians only did anal because God can't see your butthole.
Well, that's only if you're not married.
Okay,
but first base, I think is just like literally just making out. Making out,
okay.
I think second base is feeling each other up, but over
heavy petting, clothes. Heavy petting, and dry humping.
And then third base is like maybe digital penetration, but not full on like intercourse.
What do you mean digital? Are you trying to say like
fingering,
cunnilingus?
Sure, or like a
toss
hand
and
job.
salad.
tossing salad would be penetration of a sexual organ. So I think that
You
would be
don't have
home
to
base.
stick your tongue all the way in. You could just, do a little rimmy.
Yeah, maybe if you're just using your
You
tongue.
could do a
I
little
guess.
rusty trombone, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. So, but I think those are the bases, with fourth base being actual
So
sex.
third is mouth, tongue, hands,
Yeah, it's hands in the pants, I think.
or maybe a foot job.
Sure. I mean, we can be creative. It's 2022.
And then fourth base or home is
Sex.
penetration.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't say like sex. Yeah, penetration.
Vaginal or anal penetration.
Yeah, I would say so. Like, I would count anal as sex. Absolutely. That's such a weird loophole that I never
Well, I
understood.
think that Christians think that anal is in third base category, but I could be incorrect.
I don't fucking know, man. Since I was actually raised by parents who loved me and gave me sexual education, I know that anal is also sex. So, shout out to my parents.
What is holding hands?
Holding
That's
hands
that's my
is
favorite base.
first base.
Well, I feel like this would have been really good information to have known about before. So, what is complimenting each other?
I think that's going to practice. I don't think you're even like
Warm-ups?
Yeah, it's like warm-ups. That's maybe like t-ball.
Batting practice. Okay.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Okay.
But initially, I don't know how to describe, like, if their relationship wasn't built on a lie. Initially, their early relationship was very sweet because he treated her very well and respectfully.
Mhm.
And she was just so fucking in love with him. Like, it was one of those where, like, he can do no wrong. And she was absolutely in his corner. And then the reciprocity of him being in her corner early on was really admirable because he loved that she spoke out. He loved the way that she wanted to be involved in the ministry. Because keep in mind, like, even today, when very few religions allow women to be as involved in the ministry as what she was. And he allowed it and he supported it. So it was a very sweet, harmless relationship for Tammy starting out.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's it's an unfortunate story that we always keep seeing and are always told about how, like, money, power, fame, it corrupts people, and that definitely is what ends up happening to him. But Jim and Tammy were both interested in performing, and North Central allowed them to connect that to their religious upbringing. So they finally got to mesh these two worlds together. They married on April 1st, 1961, so just a year after meeting. Jim's family disapproved of the marriage and did not go to the wedding. Tammy's family didn't have the funds to attend. And Jim's family was disapproving in the sense of how we would be disapproving and saying, you literally just met her.
And it wasn't like out of college to get married. It was a problem.
Yeah, it was a big fucking problem. And they said that they didn't know, but it was pretty well known that you would be thrown out of school because their college had a strict rule that no one was allowed to marry before graduating.
Which is, I think, pretty admirable rule, man.
I know, it's pretty interesting because
feminist, because it's protecting girls as education. It sucks that they are getting kicked out. But
well, I like the rose-colored lenses you put on to think that it's about preserving women's education.
That's what I want it to be.
Yeah, when it's more for sure just making sure they can continue to proselytize as many people as possible and not get them pulled away to start a family. But I like your interpretation. So,
well, you shut me up. I didn't even think about that. They wanted to pay tuition. They wanted to pay their $40 a semester.
Yeah,
Don't get them dry.
Those big dollars spent back in the fucking 60s. So after a brief stint working as youth ministers at the Minneapolis Evangelical Auditorium, they left Minneapolis to work as traveling preachers. Jim preached while Tammy sang songs and played the accordion. They struggled in those first years, making next to no money, even getting paid with like odds and ends. One time a chicken, which they did not eat. Tammy kept it as a pet.
She's a fucking sweetheart, man.
I know
it's
it.
hard to hate her.
But they didn't stop. And Tammy was doing like funny, silly puppet shows back at the youth ministries. And she picked it up again for kids, like on the road. And according to her book, Tammy, Telling It My Way, a visiting preacher from North Carolina approached them and said, quote, Jim and Tammy, God has spoken to me. The Lord has a divine plan for the two of you. End quote. He told them he wanted them to work for him in North Carolina.
That'd be so sick. Imagine someone being like, I will give you a job in North Carolina and you can just live on the coast and enjoy the ocean and you don't have a college degree. Doesn't matter.
Right?
Oh,
he just liked their gusto. Or he saw a young couple, multi-talented, multifaceted, that he could easily pry upon and, exploit. But,
yeah.
Again, pick the color lenses you want to put on today. So they became popular among the Assemblies of God churches and were paid to visit and minister at other churches. And from those connections, in 1965, they met American Demon himself, Pat Robertson, as you remember, who ran CBN, or the Christian Broadcasting Network.
Mm-hmm.
Robertson offered to turn the couple's puppet show ministry into a children's television show. Jim accepted on the condition that if it was successful, he'd be allowed to create a late night type show for Christians. And it was successful, really successful. But it was something that the two of them did together.
Yeah.
And when Tammy became pregnant, it became the perfect point for Jim to sink his own ship and allow for that late night type Christian show to be born. What we would now know as something called the 700 Club.
Mentioned previously in this series and still going strong today.
Yeah, unfortunately. Depending on who you ask, it was Pat pushing them out and wanting the spotlight back, or Jim wanting more of it. Either way, Jim and Tammy stood before Robertson, weeping on their last episode. Tammy had just belted out her last song. Jim had read a passage from Corinthians. Robert stepped forward to present them silver tea service, saying, quote, for your 7 years of faithful service to the Christian Broadcasting Network, end quote. And according to an Esquire article, this is a direct quote from it, their next endeavor cemented the Bakkers as televangelist mainstays. In 1974, they founded the PTL, or Praise the Lord Club, that carried the televised production of Jim and Tammy Faye's preaching and evangelizing.
Okay.
So let's talk
PTL
about
reminds me of CTR.
Really?
Doesn't
PTL reminds me of PTO.
Oh, I just hear like PTL and then CTR. For those of you who don't know,
CTR is choose the right. It's a Mormon thing for women.
It's for keeping sweet.
Yep, you know it. So Tammy and Jim created their show, the PTL Club, where they preached to their viewers something we are now very familiar with called the prosperity gospel. And for those who need a refresher, it's giving your money to them. God will reward you with more financial and physical wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Between money miracles and telethons, PTL was bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. And also keep in mind, like, Jim and Tammy are like, they're not crusty old white men. They're fun. So they're like skyrocketing in popularity. He was also, I don't want to say a breath of fresh air, but he really was a breath of fresh air, because you have these dudes coming on TV with, their crisp ties and everything, and then you get this dude up there with his wife who jokes with her and he's having a good time. Mm-hmm. And he genuinely
he gets bastardized in the end in there, but like he cared about what they were doing, and he cared that his wife had a part of it, and that genuine nature of what they were trying to build did resonate in the beginning, and that's what I think made them more successful, because they were a breath of fresh air. Like, people want to see that. They don't want to see Tucker Carlson screaming at him every day. They want fucking fun young people.
Yeah.
With puppets. Everyone loves puppets.
Who doesn't love a puppet? Honestly, most children, actually, I think. But like, you're completely right. In the beginning, it was Jim and Tammy, and it was like a young-ish couple who just loved each other and loved teaching and preaching the gospel in a very friends in your living room type of way, not crusty old man screaming type of way.
Right.
So it was no surprise that they got pretty popular. And Jim began expanding their studios to multiple buildings that became known as Heritage Village. And the money didn't stop. They began to expand the Heritage production compound into an amusement park called Heritage USA. According to religionandpolitics.com, Heritage USA combined the Bakkers' growing televangelism empire with theme park hedonism, offering an immersive experience in the sights, sounds, and practices of American conservative evangelicalism.
Okay, well, those websites really need to be separated.
Religionandpolitics.com. Good one.
Hedonism, is that something you want associated with your Christian park?
Well, I mean, think about it. It's Six Flags.
The pursuit of pleasure and sensual self-indulgence. I was watching Bad Girls Club, and they went to a club called Hedonism. So I'm like, is that it? But you know,
it makes absolutely perfect sense, because like it's a perversion of it all. Honestly, like, imagine Six Flags but with a mini Jerusalem and a replica of Billy Graham's childhood home, and Passion of the Christ plays, because baby, that's exactly what the fuck was in Heritage USA.
So uncomfortable. I don't. But
that's
hedonism.
That's hedonism.
So uncomfortable. I have a problem with that word.
Well, like, it honestly, don't mean to be like another boy spoiler, but it reminds me of like their superhero theme park. You're just like, we've gone too far. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I think they mean by hedonism, because you shouldn't be paying an entry fee to ride a roller coaster and then stop into the Jerusalem gift shop where Christ was crucified. It's not. That's hedonism, baby.
Yeah, it
that's
doesn't sit right. It doesn't sit right. It gives me emotional acid reflux.
Yeah, as it should. So, spanning 2,300 acres, the park became the third most popular in the U.S., right behind Disneyland and Disney World.
So fucking successful. I can't even think what comes second to Disneyland or Disney World. Universal Studios, maybe?
Have you been to Universal? It sucks dick.
No,
I'm not sure if the one in Florida is any better, but the one in California is a massive disappointment.
Well, they'll just let anyone work there. Am I right, Casey Anthony?
Nice one, bro.
Thank you. I was going for deep cuts today.
That was a deep cut. That was for the real ones. That was for the real ones checking the fuck in. So, anyway, you know, number one pro-life advocate, Casey Anthony. So I can't. Heritage USA was built by famous church builder Roe Messner. Remember that name? Who has built more than 1,700 churches, including several megachurches. And something you might want to also keep in mind, they used $200 million of PTL funds to fucking build it.
Whoops. Keep in mind that when they're getting these funds, it's not just like call in to PTL because you like us. It's call into PTL because we're talking about very real issues impacting the world, and we're doing a fundraiser via telephone, and you're expecting your money go to these causes.
Yeah. So telethons were sometimes for PTL. Telethons were sometimes for righteous causes. Telethons were for pay to pray. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you've got a prayer, you need an extra herd, tackle a couple dollars onto that. So yeah, people very much thought their money was going to other things.
We're both children. We're both children of the 90s. Some of us have like a little 80s asterisk on there. But it was like PBS where it was like, oh, this is made possible by viewers like you.
Yeah.
If Wishbone, I'm saying this, I'm leaning in. If Wishbone would have gotten taken off the fucking air because PBS wanted to build a stupid fucking hedonism theme park, I would have burned down Washington. Could you imagine how pissed you'd be? Keep Wishbone on the air.
I agree. Also, as a child of the 90s, I very much so remember the 700 Club.
I don't. I was protected. Yeah, I don't remember this at all. I was dick deep in watching Wishbone, man. I don't.
Well, as was I, because it was all on public free access TV, and if you just start flipping through the channels, you would see it.
I watched Maury because we only had the 13 channels. So
it was like Maury. Literally it went Maury, and then it went like Jerry Springer, and then the next channel was the 700 Club.
I never saw the 700 Club. It was either Maury,
maybe the Mormons kept it out of Utah. Honestly.
I wonder if they did. I wonder if it wasn't popular because it would have been directly opposed
they put
to
fucking,
Mormon views.
KSL on that channel instead.
Yeah, they used to have. That's actually probably it because I do remember they would have like women sitting around and being like, "We have public events happening." Tea, and it was mind-numbingly dull.
Yeah, I bet they kept it out of Utah because I remember it very specifically because it had like the 700 Club logo in the corner at all times, and it was always an emergency to call in and give them money. I remember that very vividly.
Yeah, my introduction to Tammy Faye was RuPaul's Drag Race as an adult. So, well, we can get into that later.
Catch up. So, at the height of PTL, Tammy Faye and Jim were getting dragged for their extravagance. Per the New York Times, they had an air-conditioned doghouses, which is actually kind of cool.
I think that's fine, yeah.
I think it's fine. Gold-plated bathroom fixtures.
It's a little extravagant.
Not as much fine.
Yeah.
And matching Rolls Royces.
Unnecessary.
Yeah. And, unfortunately, Tammy was always dressed up and dripping in fucking gold and diamonds, baby. She was iced the fuck out. Call her fucking Paul Wall.
Yeah, what makes me sad, though, is... through the eyes of Tammy Faye, it does show her very extravagantly, but she was also, I would say her love language was gift giving because she also shared that wealth. Like, I know it sounds like I'm making excuses for it, and I probably am. But Tammy Faye, I don't think was greedy. I think she was a poor kid who grew up and finally had fucking money, and she's like, I'm going to use it on me. I'm going to use it on you. I'll use it on your sister. I'll use it on your friends. I'll use it on, like, she'd be like, oh, you're coming to visit me? I'm going to buy you like a $5,000 coat just for you taking 5 minutes out of your day, is how she was spending it. And it was really sad because it just perpetuated the entire, her entire childhood of, I have to do things to get people to like me outside of just being myself. Yeah. And for her in adulthood, no one really, her own mom didn't even really come around it was to criticize her. But then like Tammy Faye would like give her all of this, luxury. And her mom, for the most part, only took the money because she wanted to piss off the Baptists, which I find hilarious. But it was just like, she was fucking sharing the wealth. And I don't, I don't know. It was sad.
I mean, it's tough and it's sad. I will say objectively, Tammy Faye is definitely what we imagine, what any extremely poor person, and they're horrifically, chronically white trash, and I say that with peace and love, and they come into a fuck ton of money, and they do things like inlay their trailer with gold. It's 100%. Just like, it's very peace and love, Donald Trump of them, like Donald Trump luxury. It's cheap almost.
It's silly. Yeah. It was very silly the way like she would spend her money. Like it would be in the middle of summer and she would be in like head to toe a white mink coat.
Yeah.
And they would be like, are you hot? And she's like, I've never been more comfortable.
Yeah.
Like all her, like it was the theater of her wanting to show people that she finally had made it.
Yeah. And The unfortunate side of this is like Tammy did have a bit of a shopping addiction, and she even on a few occasions would like make comments on their network on live TV being like shopping is cheaper than therapy, and she'd say things like I hope in heaven you get a credit card that has no limit. Like it was all very silly and funny.
She's
but she's
preaching directly to me, Noelle.
Yeah, she knows who her audience is, but she was funny. But she did have a bit of a problem with spending.
Yeah.
So it was a tough look. And with fame and public perception comes hate. And Tammy was constantly mocked for her makeup. She went from a girl who grew up thinking makeup will make you go to hell to full face, babes. Full fucking face. And it became such like a shtick that comedians and late night hosts of the time loved to impersonate Tammy, joking that her crying would lead to thick black streams on her face. And you could even buy t-shirts that were like slathered with makeup stains on it, and it would say, I ran into Tammy Faye at the mall.
It was mean. Yeah. And she's such a fucking icon, man. She'd be like, that's all right. Like, I actually have photos of my headshots. So if you want to like talk terrible about me, actually, here you go. Maybe this will inspire you. Do you want me to sign it? And she was like, thank you so much. And it was just like hard to hate her because she was just so graciously sweet.
Well, yeah.
Like, it's just a trademark,
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, just like any bad bitch in history, she embraced her image and used it, even if it was like used negatively against her. And in her book, Tammy, Telling It My Way, she said, quote, makeup artists all over the country have tried to get me to take off my eyelashes or quit wearing so much mascara. I just laugh and say, that would be like Dolly Parton having a breast reduction. When it was suggested that Tammy remove her makeup just for a minute as part of a makeover segment, she refused, declaring, quote, a clown never takes off his makeup, end quote. And per the LA Times, if a makeup artist wanted to take off her eyeliner, it would be impossible because in the 90s, she got her eyeliner, eyebrows, and lip liner permanently tattooed on her face. Tammy said, quote, I tattooed around my eyes because I lined them anyway. I tattooed my eyebrows on because they were gone from pulling them out so much. The only thing I wish I wouldn't have done was the lining of my lips. It felt like fire. I thought, man, I don't want to go to hell after that. And then, just a little fun fact, no matter how rich Tammy became and how much money she spent on everything else, she always preferred to buy her makeup at the drugstore.
Queen knows a good dupe.
That's it.
Every queen knows a good dupe.
It's true. And I think these quotes perfectly describe the lovable and unpredictable humor of Tammy. While Jim began becoming more like rigid and stuck to the traditional televangelist preacher ways, like clenched fists at the screen, Tammy would often have like tearful outbursts about life struggles and successes, both in the world and about her own personal experiences. Reverend Mel White, a former ghostwriter for preacher Jerry Falwell, described her appeal as a combination of Martha Stewart, Dr. Joyce Brothers, and Carol Burnett. Quote, she talked about sex and flirted with Jim. She took on the caricature of an obedient wife and blasted it. You have never seen Pat Robinson's wife or Jerry Falwell's wife. They stay at home doing what those wives do. End quote.
Yeah, she would talk about like erectile dysfunction. And be like, these are ways to treat it because you want to be happy and you want to have a happy marriage. And this is part of like what happy couples do. And people would be horrified and they'd be like, that's not appropriate to talk about. And she's like, I'm just letting people be happy. We should support them. Like in the most like it was almost like she was confused why some of this stuff would be a problem to, these televangelist networks because she was so like, but this is life and it's part of life. Like we got to talk about it and like let people know that God loves them even though their dick don't work. Yeah.
Well, like, and her whole thing was like, we're a program that also reaches out to married couples. And we think it's important to have like love and, between a married couple. And, that's what this also could include. And Tammy provided like sentimental and emotional like stories and some like tough stories even. She was noted for her candid discussion of topics that were considered taboo amongst many of the other evangelicals, ranging from, as Chelsea said, penile implants to acceptance and compassion for the LGBTQ community. At the height of the AIDS epidemic in the mid-1980s, Tammy emotionally interviewed Stephen Peters, I think. There's an I in there. I could be wrong. He is a gay Christian minister who had been diagnosed with AIDS. On a segment called Tammy's House Party, which was a part of the PTL Club, they discussed his sexuality, coming out, being diagnosed with AIDS, and the death of his partner. During the episode, Tammy emotionally addressed her viewership saying, quote, "How sad that we as Christians, who are to be the salt of the earth, we who are supposed to be able to love everyone, are afraid so badly of an AIDS patient that we will not go up and put our arm around them and tell them that we care."
Well, and she went hard on this segment too. You can see it online, but she was like, "Are your parents supportive?" And he said yes. And she would like look directly into the camera and be like, "That's what good Christian parents do. They love you for who you are, and they support you through hardships and trials." And the people involved with PTL were mortified. Like even her husband was like, "Oh, that's just what Tammy does. Can't control her." And this was kind of where you started to see a little bit of the fissures happening, because she really was this icon who was talking about stuff that Christians were taught you don't talk about. And even today, like if you're like, "I'm a Christian, but I support the LGBTQ community," and that like has to be something that you often say, or it's like, "Yeah, I'm from Utah, but I'm not a Mormon."
Yeah.
It's so intertwined. And she was, imagine if she could have been, if people didn't get in her way, the type of success that this could have had.
Yeah. No, 1,000%. She was ahead of her time. And throughout the AIDS epidemic, Tammy advocated for viewers of the PTL Club to follow Christ and show compassion and pray for the ill. And she also went on to invite drug addicts on the show to interview them about substance abuse. And Tammy faced her own internal pains and struggles. As the separations continued to divide them, like Jim became more distant and just straight up started to ignore her almost completely. And this is when Tammy like had a bout with pneumonia, had some issues with muscle relaxers, and one thing after another, she began to struggle with a pill addiction and was forced into treatment.
Well, and this was also at the time of, this is like the predecessor to the opioid crisis, where it's like, this is a miracle pill and it will make you feel better, so just take it. And she would say, "Okay." And she was so confused. She'd be like, "My doctor told me to take them." And it was pretty blindsiding. And I think it's just so sad, man, how sad she was and the amount of drugs she was taking, because just being ignored by your romantic partner and, you know, the fallout of your corporation for, you know, supporting people through the AIDS epidemic and like, you know, bringing on the true quote unquote sinners that you're supposed to embrace and like saying it with her chest. And it was fucking stressing her out because she was doing stuff that she felt was right. And Jim ignored her for it because he was more focused on making money at this point than he was the actual missionary work of being a televangelist.
And like, I think Tammy was a victim of circumstance for sure, like you said, like it being kind of right at the time when we were just prescribing opiates for everything. And she started to become more vocal internally and push back on things and basically got like modern day diagnosed with hysteria. So it makes perfect sense how she fell down like a addiction and problem with pills. Yeah,
they wouldn't even let... Yeah, and they were so disrespectful to her, and she was probably the most successful thing about that network. I don't think people were tuning in for anyone else.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, she would start talking. Her husband would be fucking talking, and maybe like a phone call here, a phone call there, and then she would come in and start talking. Phones would be ringing off the hook, like making them a cash hand over fist.
Yeah, she was just more personable, and so it made them a lot of money. And as Tammy became this beacon of hope and humanity, Jim was sinking the motherfucking ship. According to Tammy Faye's book, Tammy Telling It My Way, In 1980, Jim was introduced to a woman named Jessica Hahn at a hotel and encouraged to have sex with her, which he did. Years later, Jessica tells the story differently. Tammy states Jessica was sent to the hotel under the pretense that Jessica was there to babysit their children. Jessica was 21 at the time, religious, and looked up to Jim Bakker. She felt he misused his powerful position and assaulted her, which led her to the Charlotte Observer because John Wesley Fletcher, who introduced Jim to Jessica, took $287,000 of PTL funds to silence her from coming out and talking about this assault.
Sure, this still happens today. It's gross.
Straight up. Also here, I just want to note that Jessica and Tammy did reach out to each other later on in life and had this moment of Tammy apologizing to her for everything that she had to go through and what happened, and Jessica being like, "I'm so thankful for you." So anyway, just a little boop there. Quote from Tammy telling it my way: Jerry Falwell had cleverly seized upon this time, one of the lowest points in our lives, to do his dirty work. Jerry Falwell was a preacher known for creating the Moral Majority, a political Christian movement during the Reagan era, and for creating Liberty University, a college based in fundamental Christian principles. When Falwell learned the Jessica story was about to break, he offered to step in and take over PTL, against Tammy's wishes.
She should have taken over.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But Jim agreed and stepped down. According to Tammy, Falwell wanted to destroy PTL because he was trying to help Bush win the White House and was worried PTL would support Pat Robertson, who was considering running for president, as we learned in the last episode. Mm-hmm. The last. According to Tammy and Grunge.com, Falwell spread a rumor that Jim Bakker was gay and that both the Bakkers had extravagant paychecks and demands, ruining their reputations.
But as shitty as that rumor is, there was weight to it. Tammy also had her own theories as to why Jim was pulling away from her over the years, and it was probably because he had more access to men who looked up to him and would be willing to perform sexually.
Yeah, so the same guy who introduced him to Jessica, John Fletcher, is the same guy who the rumors came out about him having sexual relations with that man.
With that man.
You know. And cannot confirm or deny it, but probably can just go ahead and confirm. And then Falwell began dismantling the company, laying people off and getting rid of property. According to the Belleville News, PTL filed for bankruptcy in 1987 and in 1988. Jim Bakker was indicted for wire and mail fraud charges as part of an IRS investigation. In 1989, Jim was convicted and sentenced to 45 years in prison. Spoiler alert, he only served 5. Investigations revealed that Jim had been misappropriating funds raised for Heritage USA to pay large salaries and bonuses, in addition to overselling lifetime partnerships to the park, per Religion and Politics, that website that you said needs to be separated. Mm-hmm. Despite this, Tammy stood by Jim through all the scandal, including several instances where she cried on camera defending him. But in 1992, while Jim was still in prison, Tammy filed for divorce, saying in a letter to the New Covenant Church in Orlando, Florida, quote, "For years I have been pretending that everything is all right, but in fact I hurt all the time. I cannot pretend anymore."
And well, it's sad because you look at how their story started, and she was pushed aside for money time and time again. Even when stuff started going south, Jim didn't care about her. He only cared about the investors and the partners in the program. And Tammy was always pushed aside, and they would exploit her trauma too. They'd be like, "You need to go on and talk about your pill addiction." She's like, "Oh, yeah. I don't really want to do that." And they're like, "Well, it's good for ratings." And so, Which is so, I think he would have moved oceans for her when they started dating. And then it, like, to see how bad it disintegrated, where he didn't give a fuck about her because of money. And she would 100% stood by him. Like,
Yeah.
even when he fucked up, she would, toxic positivity, like, to a T. She'd be like, well, this is just a really good learning experience then, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And he's just so fucking mean to her.
Yeah, it was really brutal there at the end. But it's okay, because Tammy ended up remarrying Roe Messner, if you remember from above.
The guy who built all the churches.
You better believe it. The mega church builder. Roe lost millions of dollars on Heritage USA, and both he and Tammy had this mutual connection in wanting to rebuild their personal and professional lives after the fall of PTL. But unfortunately, trouble only finds Miss Tammy Faye, because Roe was sentenced to nearly 3 years in prison on bankruptcy fraud charges because he was concealing assets in his bankruptcy.
Motherfucker.
I know. He spent 27 months in prison before being able to reunite with Tammy. And while unfortunately Jim Bakker is still alive, remarried, and currently hosts the Jim Bakker Show, which focuses on the end times and the second coming of Christ, while promoting emergency survival products, and was recently sued by the state of Missouri for selling fake coronavirus cures.
Oh, God.
Look it up. I want to redirect into Tammy Faye, especially in these times. We deserve her. See, Tammy became somewhat of a gay icon. Mm-hmm. Her and literal Earth God, Princess Di, were some of
the podcast.
Yeah. They were some of the few people of power in the time of the AIDS crisis who gave compassion, love, and humanity. Most of the Christian community turned their backs to the LGBTQ people, and Tammy said, no way. Christian networks were promoting conversion therapy and Pray the Gay Away, and Tammy was going to pride events, promoting and encouraging love and acceptance. She said, quote, I think I have a lot in common with the gay population because they've been made fun of and put down and misunderstood, and have had a really rough row to hoe in life.
Row to hoe, huh?
Yeah.
I love that. Never heard that phrase before. Oh, Tammy, you icon.
Right? She went on to create a talk show with Jim J. Bullock, an openly gay actor, and gave her renaissance in full credit to the support of the gay community. She became the subject of the documentary titled The Eyes of Tammy Faye, which came out in 2000 and was narrated by RuPaul. In early 2004, she appeared on the second season of VH1's The Surreal Life with Ron Jeremy, Vanilla Ice, Tracy Bingham, Eric Estrada, and Trishelle Cantella. She put on, and then she put out her bestseller, I Will Survive, and You Will Too. Of course, critics have come out to say there were limitations to Tammy's acceptance of the gay community, as in she wouldn't come out about gay marriage, but her live TV comments of, quote, no matter what happens to a young person in their life, they're still your boy, they're still your girl, end quote. Oh, wait, no, not end quote yet. And I think it's so important that we as mom and dad love through anything, end quote. I think that alone did a lot for the LGBTQ kids in evangelical homes. So
absolutely. Because it let parents know that it was okay to love your kids, but it also let those hardcore evangelicals know that parents loving their kids is condoned by Tammy Faye, which is a good thing. You need people. If you are that caught up in something, sometimes you just need permission that something's okay. And she had the power and the platform to push that through, which is amazing.
Yeah, especially someone so in the thick of it.
Yeah. Oh, they were so mean to her for all of this stuff that she was doing. Just even gaslit. Tammy, you're just a woman. You don't know what real issues are. And you'd be like, oh, yeah, I do.
Yeah. Yeah. And in March 2004, Tammy went on Larry King Live and announced that she had inoperable lung cancer and began chemotherapy. And I should also mention here, she'd been battling chemo for I think 6 years previous to this. She would continue to go on Larry King and speak of chemo, the cancer's remission, and its brutal return. She was a guest by phone on Larry King in December of 2006, and said that she was receiving hospice care in her home. She appeared in her son Jay's documentary series, One Punk Under God, wherein they talked about her cancer treatments. And in one episode, close to the end, she required the use of oxygen in order to talk. She experienced severe weight loss and panic attacks from her treatment. In May 2007, she issued a statement on her website saying that chemotherapy had stopped, and she urged her fans to just continue to pray for her. On July 18th, 2007, Tammy made her final appearance on Larry King Live. At the time, she weighed just 65 pounds and was unable to eat solid food. Tammy's husband, Roe, later said that he believed she chose to do this interview to say a final goodbye to her fans. On July 20th, 2007, Tammy died at her home in Loch Lloyd near Kansas City, Missouri, after an 11-year bout with cancer. She was 65 years old. But so Tammy lives on. She lives on, baby. Yeah. She lives on. She lives on in the stage musical titled The Gospel According to Tammy Faye. Another musical following her life titled Big Tent. It debuted in May of 2007 at an off-Broadway New World Stages in New York City. A play about her final hours titled Tammy Faye's Final Audition. It premiered at the Cincinnati Fringe Festival in 2015, and the play takes place in a fevered dream at the end of her life, wherein she enlists the men in her life for one final TV talk show audition, which sounds so fucking cool. I would love to see it.
So fun.
And, of course, in the 2021 movie, The Eyes of Tammy Faye, which is based on the 2000 documentary of the same name, Jessica Chastain plays Tammy Faye and Andrew Garfield plays her husband, Jim. It's fucking incredible.
So good.
The Eyes of Tammy Faye opened on September 17th, 2021, and Chastain won a Critics' Choice Award, a Screen Actors Guild Award, and the Academy Award for Best Actress for her performance. And most recently and currently, British playwright James Graham is also writing the book for a new musical about Tammy Faye with music by Elton John and lyrics by Jake Shears.
That's going to be so good.
Right? And there it is, just as she would have wanted it. Her legacy continues on in musical theater. And that is Tammy Faye.
Oh, the hero of the story.
Yeah, the hero we needed and deserved.
Imagine how successful she would have been without men.
Honestly, truly.
Life. Dude, if she would just run off with that dude that was super nice to her, was it David Cobb or something?
Yeah.
God, she would have been so happy.
Yeah, that was something I didn't bring up in here. Was just because, like, it's not...
It doesn't matter.
She talks about it in her book a little bit, and it was more of just, like, a friendship.
Yeah.
And Jim... like, who had been cheating on her and was caught cheating on her and admitted cheating on her, naturally, just like any other cheater, just projected his bullshit and said that they were having an emotional affair. When really he was just one of the few people who showed her kindness.
He listened to her sing her music. That was it. She would just be like singing. And he was like, "You got a real pretty voice." And he treated her with like a genuine respect. And she hadn't had that in so long, and then Jim destroyed that.
Yeah, and
yeah,
and this was in the era of like Jim making fun of her and the way that she looked and did her makeup, and he was like, "I think you look great," you know what I mean? Just being a kind person. And but naturally, Jim tried to say that like she had an emotional affair and made her like go on TV and
say how much she loved her husband, and her fucking up. But he never came out. He never, like, when his affair came out, it was like a fire drill of trying to get ahead of it.
Yeah. No, 1,000%. Well, when it came out, it wasn't even, like, about the affair. It was more about, like, the legality of trying to fucking give someone hush money.
Yeah.
And another detail that I didn't add in there, but I guess it would be interesting to know was, like, so towards the end of her life, she would do multiple reappearances on Larry King, and it was mostly because like Larry King was chill with her.
Yeah.
And when she right before she died, she let Roe know that like when I pass, I want it to be Larry King who breaks the news specifically, and only I want him to be the first to do it. Mm-hmm. So just like I don't know, she was just always such a I don't know what the word I'm looking for here is. She just had such convictions and morals, and like
Yeah.
it was, they never faltered, you know, even like when she was involved in the mess of the where the money goes. I don't think she fully understood what was happening.
I think she was in the naivety that comes with women who let men 100% control their households.
Yeah.
In religions. But it's also ignorance by being naive. So
Yeah.
you can't 100% dismiss it.
Yeah.
I think that she put her message before like maybe the downfall of it and even being like on TV. Like what I'm saying is important. So it's okay that this other stuff happens. I don't know though, because that's never really divulged of her knowing where the money was, because she didn't even know how much Jim made in a year.
Yeah. So I agree. I think it's a little bit of that ignorance is bliss, but also like sometimes we got to be like, you need to be held accountable for your ignorance.
So
it's tough, but yeah, that's Tammy Faye. And unrelated to Tammy Faye, but related to us, you can go to the link tree in all of our bios.
Like, what's she gonna say?
Nothing great, just a plug. I'm at Noelle Fain. That is at Sith Lord. That Chelsea. God, I did that every time. And you can find us at Go to Hell Podcast as well. If you click that link in the bio, it will bring you to Linktree, as said, where you can first find pro-choice resources. Second, get some of our merch. We've got cool fucking merch in there. We've got wanted poster merch, and we also still have the Protect Trans Kids merch, where 100% of the proceeds are donated to trans organization. We have our Patreon link, which is one of my, totally unbiased opinion, one of my favorite things. We had a very fun and loud and emotional episode this week, and $1 gets you in. But please remember that you signed an NDA, so you can't say shit to nobody.
Yeah, snitches get stitches, motherfuckers.
Straight up. You can also find a link to Kelly's stickers or at Wildwood Owl on Etsy. She makes our cool shit, and she also makes her own cool shit, so check it out. You can get a link to our Discord server, which is always a good time. You can also find our private Facebook group if you're a boomer. You can follow us on Twitter. And like always, if you're listening to us, I don't know why you would need this, but you can also find our Spotify and Apple Podcast links in there as well. And, Tammy was always a big fan of telling people to always be true to themselves, right? Didn't matter what anyone else said. And so that's why I, especially now, today, in this climate, politically, human rights-wise, I want to say, hail Satan.
Hail Tammy Faye.
Hail
and
Tammy
her
Faye.
eyelashes.
Especially her eyelashes.
Put them on real thick tomorrow just for her.
Do it. Triple that mascara.
Oh, love to see it. Okay, bye.
Bye.